I am Dominus Cinephile.
Welcome to my movie and TV series reviews, where I will provide honest opinions of the latest releases. If the movie or TV series is a hit or a miss, be sure to know I will inform you. But if the movie or series is trash, be also sure to know that I will trash the hell out of the movie. I am Dominus Cinephile.
And the movie on the review table today is the Nollywood film Lísàbí the Uprising. Lísàbí the Uprising is a 2024 Nollywood historical drama directed by Niyi Akinmolayan and co-written by Yinka Olaoye and Akinmolayan. The film boasts a star-studded ensemble of prominent Yoruba Nollywood actors, including Lateef Adedimeji, Odunlade Adekola, Adebimpe Oyebade, Ibrahim Chatta, Jide Awobona, Eniola Ajao, Femi Adebayo, Gabriel Afolayan, Ibrahim Yekini, Adebowale Adedayo, also known as Mr Macaroni, Jide Kosoko, and Roseline Afije. The movie premiered on Netflix on September 27, 2024, and fans of Yoruba Nollywood films were eagerly anticipating the release of this much-talked-about project. Like House of Gar, we are once again thrown into the realm of historical drama centered on yet another Yoruba hero, Lisabi. The Uprising vividly recounts the legendary Lisabi rebellion of the late 18th century in Abeokuta, Nigeria, telling the story of Lisabi Agbongbo Akala, the courageous Egba warrior who led a successful revolt against the oppressive Oyo Empire. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this review to see whether Lísàbí the Uprising redeems itself from the disappointment that plagued films like House of Gar, which fell short of expectations, or if it succumbs to the same pitfalls commonly found in Nollywood and Yoruba cinema. Before we dive into this review, let's first explore the historical context of Lísàbí's rebellion, as the movie is billed as a dramatization of this pivotal event. The rebellion, led by the warrior Lisabi, was a courageous revolt against the powerful Oyo Empire, and it remains a significant chapter in Yoruba history. The Lísàbí rebellion, led by the warrior Lisabi Agbongbo Akala, took place in the late 18th century in Abeokuta, Nigeria, around 1780. At the time, the Egba people, who resided in Abeokuta, were under the oppressive rule of the old Oyo Empire, which demanded heavy tributes and exploited the people. Lisabi, an Egba warrior of great skill and intelligence, emerged as a leader who sought to liberate his people from this domination. Using his influence and military prowess, Lisabi secretly organized the Egba into a resistance movement. He formed alliances with local groups and devised a strategic plan to overthrow the Oyo Empire's garrison in Abeokuta. In a series of well-coordinated attacks, Lisabi and his forces ambushed and defeated the Oyo warriors, successfully driving them out of Abeokuta. The rebellion was a pivotal moment in the history of the Egba people, as it not only freed them from the control of the Oyo Empire, but also strengthened their unity and independence. Lisabi is celebrated as a hero for his bravery and leadership, and his legacy remains a significant part of Yoruba history. I wasn't exactly eager or excited to watch yet another epic historical tale from Yoruba Nollywood. Can you blame me? Not after enduring weak, frustrating and downright insulting films like House of Gar, Jagun Jagun, Kesari and Beast of Two Worlds. From the moment I saw the trailer, I had a sinking feeling that, like most Nollywood productions, this one would spiral into a colossal mess, ultimately disrespecting the very history it intended to portray. At the start of the film, however, you're presented with a scene that briefly gives you hope. It almost seems like the movie might stand its ground and be worth watching. In this scene, we meet King Olodan, portrayed by Femi Adebayo, who, after refusing to pay the heavy tributes demanded by the Alaafin, is brutally beaten and dragged to the Alaafin's palace. Enraged by Olodan's defiance, the Alaafin of Oyo played by Odunlade Adekola, orders his execution, intending to make an example of him for all who dare to resist. Beyond the frustratingly monotone acting and the recycled appearances of the same actors in almost every Yoruba Nollywood film, this scene had its merits. The scenery and color palette were commendable, and I was even impressed by the execution of the killings in that sequence. But, as expected, something inevitably jolts you back to reality, reminding you that you're watching yet another poorly executed Nollywood production. As you immerse yourself in the film, anticipating a historical drama, the unfolding events soon become an affront to your intelligence. The movie opens with an immediate introduction to two key characters, Lisabi Agbongbo Akala and Osokenu. Lisabi is presented as a hard-working farmer and a loyal friend, while Osokenu is depicted as a lazy, love-struck man, fixated solely on his romantic aspirations. This dynamic sets the stage for their friendship, with Lisabi embodying responsibility and Osokenu representing a carefree attitude. However, the portrayal of Osokenu as the unserious friend quickly becomes tiresome. His character lacks depth and development, reducing him to a mere caricature of a lovesick fool. This shallow representation undermines the potential for a more nuanced exploration of their friendship and the challenges they face. Moreover, the plot surrounding their relationship feels disjointed and poorly constructed, leaving viewers confused about the story's direction and purpose. Several key elements feel out of place, particularly how Osokenu's storyline intertwines with the main narrative. Instead of enriching the plot, his antics detract from it, creating a disjointed experience that leaves the audience craving more substance. Ultimately, the entire storyline feels lackluster, failing to engage viewers on any meaningful level. What could have been a rich exploration of friendship and ambition instead devolves into a series of uninspired cliches. For a movie that is supposed to depict Lisabi's rebellion against the oppressive Oyo Empire, the director veered off into unrelated themes that detracted from the main story. Even if we consider creative liberty, the result is a disjointed and poorly executed film that falls flat. Now, picture this absurdity. Oyo Empire, tax collectors and warriors arrive in Lisabi and Osokenu's village, plundering the villagers' goods. They use force to make the young girls and women carry the food crops they collected as taxes. And later that night, the women are taken to their camp, where many were assaulted. The next morning, the girls return to the village, wailing and crying from the horrors they endured. And yet, the very next scene, right after this brutal violation, is Osokenu's wedding ceremony. How does that make any sense? It's a jarring transition that completely undermines the gravity of the previous events. The entire village carried on as though nothing had happened. And this is supposed to be a story about rebellion? On the very day of Osokenu's wedding, Oyo warriors and tax collectors abduct his bride and assaults her, just as they had with the other village girls. She returns home traumatized, locks herself in a room, and ultimately takes her own life. The scene where she wails, rips off her beads, and tries to evoke emotion before committing suicide is one of the weakest attempts at emotional depth I've ever seen. The performance felt shallow and contrived, marked by the usual screams and over-the-top dramatics that too many Nollywood actors mistake for prime acting. There's no subtlety, no emotional depth, just a loud, hollow display that fails to deliver the weight such a moment should carry. Osokenu pursues the Oyo Empire warriors who violated his bride, and for some inexplicable reason, this once lazy, bumbling character suddenly becomes a one-man army, taking down 10 supposedly skilled Oyo warriors single-handedly. My question to the director is this: How can a man with no military background or combat training possibly defeat 10 trained soldiers? This glaring inconsistency raises serious doubts about the film's credibility. Can someone please reach out to the director? Many of us need answers. While the fight choreography in this scene showed some potential, it ultimately fell short of being convincing. The Oyo warriors appeared more like sluggish amateurs than formidable fighters, undermining any sense of tension or excitement in the scene. Instead of creating an engaging climax, the whole sequence felt like a poorly executed fantasy, leaving viewers questioning the film's overall integrity. The director's desperate attempt to bring the film back to its original theme, the Lisabi rebellion against the Oyo Empire, quickly devolves into chaos, resulting in what is easily the most laughable plot I've ever witnessed in a historical drama. It's baffling how a story with such potential could fall apart so disastrously. Out of nowhere, Lisabi is transformed into a mystical warrior with supernatural powers, capable of summoning deities to defeat the Oyo warriors. At this point, the movie abandons any pretense of historical accuracy and devolves into a ridiculous superhero flick. The CGI is so poorly executed, so offensively lazy, that it's almost nauseating to watch. But the real atrocity lies in the complete lack of character development. There is no thought, no depth, no backstory to any of the characters. Instead, the director opts for an incoherent mess of half-baked plots, with characters veering wildly from one profile to another with no consistency. It's a staggering display of incompetence, leaving the audience to endure the sheer madness of this cinematic disaster. Let's take a moment to address some of the lackluster performances in this film, starting with Lateef Adedimeji, who plays Lisabi, the supposed heart of the story. Frankly, his portrayal was painfully mediocre. There's no emotional depth, no compelling backstory to draw the audience in or make us care about his character in the slightest. His performance was utterly forgettable. There's not a single moment that leaves an impact, no scene that delivers any sense of gravitas or intensity. Worse still, the inconsistency of his character, shifting from one profile to another, leaves the audience bewildered and disengaged. And like so many Nollywood actors, Adedimeji falls victim to the absurd tendency to overact, particularly with needless shouting and screaming. His portrayal reeks of the typical melodrama that plagues Nollywood, making it all the more frustrating to watch. It's a performance that leaves no lasting impression, except for disappointment. Adebowale Adedayo, aka Mr Macaroni, takes on the role of Osokenu, but like the lead actor, his performance falls flat. The only moment he managed to stand out was during a fight scene with the Oyo warriors, and even that brief flash of competence can't save an otherwise forgettable performance. Beyond that, his acting is as lifeless as a primary school's chalkboard. Gabriel Afolayan as Odunbamitefa? Honestly, his presence in the film is so insignificant, he may as well have been invisible. His character was so underwhelming and underdeveloped that you barely notice he's even there. As for Odunlade Adekola, playing the Alafin of Oyo, there's no surprise here. This man is in almost every Yoruba Nollywood movie, and for some bizarre reason, he's treated like the Anthony Hopkins of the industry. But the truth is, his performances are painfully one note. He plays the same character in every film with no variation, no depth, no growth. In this movie, it's just more of the same. Odunlade Adekola is always Odunlade Adekola, bland, repetitive, and offering nothing that leaves you wanting more. There's no wow factor, no brilliance, just the same old recycled performance. We could go on for hours dissecting the weak performances of most of the actors in this film and still not cover it all. But let's shift focus. The production itself, particularly the cinematography, plummeted into a train wreck the moment the movie moved beyond its opening scene. What started with potential quickly devolved into an embarrassing display of amateur filmmaking. The sound was equally disastrous. Some scenes were accompanied by bizarre, out-of-place background music that sounded more European than anything remotely fitting for a historical drama set in West Africa. Speaking of Europeans, the film introduces white enslavers who supposedly come to do business with the Alaafin of Oyo by purchasing slaves. And here's where the absurdity reaches new heights. These enslavers are laughably portrayed as Portuguese, speaking perfect Queen's English, while Jide Kosoko's character plays their interpreter. Now, let's get real. How on earth do you justify Portuguese enslavers speaking flawless English in the old Oyo Empire? What kind of historical nonsense is this? It's as if the scriptwriters and director threw logic out the window in favor of sheer lunacy. If they insisted on having English-speaking characters, why not make them British, who were also involved in the West African slave trade during that era? But no, we're subjected to the ridiculous sight of Portuguese characters speaking English in 1780 Oyo. Someone should have shouted at the director, "Portuguese enslavers do not speak Queen's English to natives in Oyo in 1780. In summary, Lisabi the Uprising is yet another catastrophic failure by Nollywood to depict a historical drama centered on a legendary figure in Yoruba history. The film is riddled with plot holes and suffers from shockingly lazy writing, accompanied by characters as shallow as the storyline itself. The performances are abysmally weak, while the CGI is so painfully bad it makes you question whether you're watching a serious production or a parody. The film's identity crisis is staggering. 1 minute it's a love story about Osokenu, then it spirals into a revenge plot over his death, before suddenly morphing into a musical, only to devolve into Lisabi and his Avengers by the end. The thematic incoherence is overwhelming, leaving the audience lost in a sea of absurdity. As if this disaster weren't enough, they've added insult to injury by announcing a part 2 for next year. The thought of enduring a sequel to this madness is beyond belief. It's hard to imagine anyone willingly subjecting themselves to another round of this cinematic train wreck. And now for my rating. Lisabi the Uprising scores a disappointing, well-deserved 2 out of 10. I'm definitely trashing this. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon for notifications. Also, be sure to follow me on TikTok, WhatsApp channel, and Instagram at Domino Cinephile for more movie and TV series reviews. Domino Cinephile, signing out.